Greetings folks, welcome to Automoto. I'm Guy Allen. Thought we'd have a chat today about the second generation BMW Paris-Dakar series. Now this follows on from the original R100GS Paris-Dakar, which has become hugely collectible. This particular generation came out around 88-89 and lasted in the market for a few years in various forms, based on the R100GS platform. Now, a very mild state of tune for this. You're talking about a 980cc boxer twin, 5-speed box of course, putting out about 60 horsepower. So that gave it a top speed in the range of about 180 or so. Not a massive performance bike, but that was never really the intention. It was intended to be more of a cruiser than an outright racer. It's got the long travel suspension, the big 21-inch front wheel of course, the massive fuel tank, 35 litres, plastic fuel tank interestingly enough, which BMW developed the material specifically for this application. And of course you can't miss it, the giant bull bars on the front of it. I'm convinced that's more styling than function, but it certainly got people's attention when it was launched. Funnily enough, I got to ride this bike when it was launched. And it was an interesting piece of kit. A really capable tourer, so something that you take on any back road with a lot of confidence. It's still a 200 kilo dry, more like 240 kilo fully wet motorcycle, so really it's not a great proposition off-road, but I don't think really that's its intention despite the Paris-Dakar branding. It's really the sort of thing that if you've got secondary back roads with lots of potholes and that sort of thing, it soaks it up with no problem at all. If you hit a dirt road, fantastic, again no problem at all. Great thing to travel on. Of course BMW had the integrated luggage that came with it, and it had a few other little niceties that made it a very practical long distance mount. Also quite comfortable, big wide handlebars. You could get heated grips with them standard. Reliability is not really an issue with them. They tend to hang together pretty well. The paralever rear end was actually a pretty recent thing for BMW at this stage, and the advantage of it was that articulated rear end meant you didn't get the typical rise and fall on the throttle that you would with a normal shaft drive. So it made it a lot more user friendly, and particularly over comparatively gnarly surfaces. I picked this bike up in Alice Springs, which is a fair way from Melbourne. It's about a 2,300 kilometre road trip. Now the idea behind that was, firstly, it would be a great trip, and secondly, it meant that I didn't have to worry about finding a transporter for the thing. So I flew in, picked up the bike. Few little teething problems. For a start, we discovered that the carburetors had a major issue. The thing wouldn't do over 110 kilometres an hour. And the reason for that was the diaphragms in the carburetors were, to use a technical term, stuffed. So we ended up having to fix them up with a bit of vinyl race tape along the way, which, believe it or not, did the job and got me home to Melbourne. Back home, of course, put new diaphragms in it, changed the oil, put new rubber on it, and away we went basically. It was terrific. They're an interesting thing to ride. The brakes are only barely adequate. It's got a single front disc which is not hugely powerful, does the job, it's okay, but really heavily loaded with two people and luggage, I think it would be marginal. One person, no problem. Performance is adequate. It will sit on pretty well any speed you care to nominate, up to about 160 as a cruise, so that's more than adequate for the job really. Fuel range of course is terrific. It does kind of 17 to the litre, roughly 16, 17 to the litre. So with a 30 odd litre fuel tank, you can work that out yourself, you've got a lot of range. Quite a comfortable thing to ride over a long distance. I mean, I've got Barkbuster hand protectors on this thing, and I've retrofitted a set of heated grips, so that makes a difference in winter. You've got an adjustable screen, you've got the big seat, so it's comfortable. It's actually a lot of fun to swing through a set of turns, surprisingly enough. It soaks up any corrugations or whatever mid-turn, no problem at all. And with a big wide handlebars, it's a big easy thing to throw around. No race bike by any stretch of the imagination, but you can still have a bit of fun. I've got a bit of time for this. This one's been knocked around a bit over the years. I'm going to leave it that way because I'm quite happy to have something that I can use over a long distance and not worry too much about. I think it's a reliable, low stress kind of bike to own. So it's interesting that 30 odd years down the track, the bike's still doing its job, and I think it's quite likely to be around in another 30. You can find out more about this bike and others at allmoto.com.